Jeffrey Jones in the back. I mean,
that was pretty funny.
Yeah. I mean, he did not put up much of a fight. And then we don't see the demise of Jeremy Davies, do we?
We see his gutted body.
Oh, yeah, you're right. And then also, I love that on their journey to this cave, they had to take a ski lift up. And the director, Antonia, she's like, you could tell who the smokers were. So they had to take a half-hour ski lift up to go walk on some mountains. But I think that adds a lot to this movie. I should say this is the second half, whatever. But this movie, as Ebert stated, you feel the mud. You feel the gross food, the visceral red meat, the look of that in the beginning. You feel when that axe hits its back, you get it. When he takes bites of that stew, you feel it, right? Like this is not when blood falls in his mouth. Like very few movies, I would say, Texas Chainsaw Massacre. You feel any Korean movie, horror movie, you felt it. I don't know. Did you feel that in this movie?
I did. And it's very rare because people typically like Hollywood movies are very glossy, and they don't really want to take the risk of having things not look pristine.
Yeah.
But I appreciate when you have a movie about cannibalism, about disgusting behavior, about the Midwest, that everyone is dirty and disgusting and it fits perfectly.
We got a lot more to talk about. Let's take a break. And when we come back, we'll talk more Ravenous. We'll be hungry to do it. Brother. We'll be back. Welcome back to Movies, Films, and Flicks, and I promise no more puns. All right? I promise. I promise.
I have one.
Oh,
no, I have one coming.
Nice. Well, from me, you can do whatever you want. I'm down with whatever puns you want, pun away.
Okay.
All right, so where are we at right now? So we're at, I guess we have the chase scene that leads Guy Pearce. McDonough gets killed and falls off a cliff. And then you have basically...
So it's the jump scene.
Yeah. And I love that Guy Pearce shoots Carlisle. And I keep calling it's Ives. He shoots Ives, whatever. He has a couple names. I'm just gonna call him Carlisle or Ives. So he shoots Ives. Ives gets right back up, and so Guy Pearce is strong at this point, right? So he has the cannibal power. That's why he survives that jump.
That's a good point. So I don't think he has that power. He might have a little bit left over, but essentially. The way I'm interpreting it, this whole film is that he got a craving for flesh and he's been fighting it the entire time. And that's why he's actually sort of weak and quiet. He's also like a coward, but this is like an additional thing to it. So I don't actually think he's that strong. I don't think he's that strong. He's just scared out of his mind when he jumps. And I did want to ask you something.
Yeah.
What are your favorite cliff diving scenes in film?
Favorite cliff diving. Can they are they jumping into water or are they diving off cliffs?
I interpreted it as just cliffs. If you want to do water, I think that would work too.
All right, so this one is okay. And I know I went super obvious with Silence of the Lambs, but I got to talk about this scene in Cliffhanger, where another Rennie Harlan directed movie. He didn't direct this one, but he directed Deep Blue Sea, whatever. There's a scene where Stallone jumps, and in the original cut, he cleared about a 40-foot cliff. He jumped, and it's not like the other one was down. It's not like one was 100 feet up, and then then he jumped 100 feet down. So you have that. He jumped. He did if he was long jumping, he would have cleared 40 feet, and everyone just called BS on it. So they cut it to where they made the jump longer. He jumps over the 40-foot crevasse, jumps over the land, then rolls down the other side of the hill. So it's quite possibly the longest jump. And I think another jump, I'm not going to say, it's maybe a fall, but she does jump. But the most impactful fall off a cliff or jump was in Last of the Mohicans. At the end, they're walking toward, Daniel Day-Lewis is chasing them up the mountain. And his brother comes up and gets killed by Wes Studi. And the girl that sees him die, she just falls off the cliff. And then you have the score playing. Have you seen this movie?
Yeah, that is... She jumps off the cliff because she was in love with the guy.
Yep.
And she realizes she's basically she thinks she's gonna die, essentially.
And here's... Oh, I love it. I love it.
Yeah, it's great. When I watched that in high school as part of history class, and when that moment happened, the teacher held up a piece of paper that had a 10 written on it.
Wow.
I know. I was like, this is really dark. I was like, should I laugh at this? I guess I'm gonna laugh because he's the teacher, but I don't think this is funny.
Wow.
But I have two of those on my list of four. So I had Last of the Mohicans as well, and I had Cliffhanger. Those are excellent choices. But two that I added to my list are Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kids, and then one that is, I think, suspect, but I think actually counts, is Thelma and Louise.
I mean, they jumped, they drove off, but I mean, if they were by a cliff, they would have jumped together.
Exactly, yeah. And so I think those are all pretty good cliff jumping scenes.
If there was a little ramp they hit before, then it definitely would have been a jump.
Yep, absolutely. They could have cleared that ravine and just kept going.
I love that you and I both picked Last of the Mohicans.
It is a phenomenal movie. I recommend everyone watch it, even though we've just spoiled it for you.
Yeah. So good, man. And then I've
never read the book. I've never read the book. I know I should. I've picked it up at Barnes & Noble, and I'm like, I love this movie. I'll love this book. And then I'm like, oh, but it was written 200 years ago.
And it won't play the score during it.
Exactly.
And then I guess we're leaving it to where Guy Pearce falls next to McDonough, all right, so Neil McDonough was in Justified, and in that show they called him a big fat baby head. So whenever I see him, I want to call him that, but I won't do it. He's also in Band of Brothers. He's awesome. But so Carlisle's just eating bodies, right? Getting his strength he's getting more strong. And then Guy Pearce ends up eating McDonough, and he walks all the way back to the fort.
Yeah, 100 miles.
And then the Wendigo, I guess she's right about him. She knows the woman who's there, Martha.
Yes.
Yeah, Martha. She knows what's up. No one else returns, just him. And so he's getting better, but then Robert Carlyle returns as Colonel Ives. How does he get that job?
I think he was always Colonel Ives.
Oh.
And that he was pretending to be Calhoun to lure people away in order to eat them and maintain his strength and maintain his lifestyle.
Got it.
Yeah. And the linchpin of all that was Knox being a drunk, which is hilarious. Because he's like, oh, I don't know. I was drunk. Or I wasn't feeling well when I saw him the first time. So maybe that's him. I don't know.
Yeah. I think he had a beard, right?
Yeah. That's the one part where, he did have a beard. But that's the one part of I think we could have done a little bit better here. But I get it. I get what you got to do.
I mean, a constant bourbon drunk. I guess everyone has their own ways of coping, right?
Yes. That's another good quote, by the way. There's too much bourbon in his bourbon. Yeah.
And I love that they just steal it. Like, will he care? Of course he will. I love that scene. So then Ives comes back. So go for it.
I did want to mention, in my own podcast, Award Wieners, we did an episode on Silence of the Lambs, and part of my research for that is that I looked up what people supposedly taste like. And I think that's something we should mention in a podcast about cannibalism. I think this is a good spot.
Yeah, tell me.
So apparently in the 1920s, a journalist, quote unquote, traveled to Africa to try human meat. And in the article / column, I'm not really quite sure what to call it. But what he wrote was that it tasted like veal. I don't actually know what veal tastes like, so I can't tell anyone, give you a better example than that. But that's apparently what it is. Veal.
I mean, that can't be terrible.
I assume not. I mean, apparently people really love veal, but I have no memory. I couldn't describe the taste of veal at all. No idea.
The way they made meat look in this movie, it probably looks better. I mean, they made a nice looking stew. They went full Carl Weathers from Arrested Development and made a delicious stew. I mean, that looked tasty.
They did, and you know what I'm impressed by? Is that instead of making human steaks, some human kebabs, they made a human stew because they know stews last longer.
Oh yeah, you have leftovers.
Yeah. Exactly.
And then once it gets down, you add a few things into it. You got some broth.
You add a stone.
We're getting
stone stew.
We're getting our stew on, baby. So they're back at the fort, right? Guy Pearce is strong, but he doesn't want to eat again. And then Ives shows up, and it all just goes haywire. But I think Colonel Ives, Robert Carlyle's plan is pretty good. I mean, a lot of I mean, if you think about them as being Hollywood and he's a producer, because there is kind of a look at, they say Hollywood. Let's say he represents a producer in Hollywood. People come through and they just get eaten up by the system. And then some people get through.
Yeah. And I should say that the director has explicitly said this is a movie about LA and Hollywood.
Yeah.
So that's like a great metaphor.
I mean, he's definitely so he gets a taste for blood, right? Guy Pearce, but somehow he ends up in Hollywood. I don't know how he ends up there. Cowardice ends up there, gets you there. You get punished and you end up there. But I guess it explains the situation. A lot of people say that. I was watching. We have a Demon Knight podcast coming up, and the visual effects guys were making fun of like, oh yeah, that's the producer's room. They're kind of saying that you get chewed up. It's very superficial. They eat you up. But I kind of love that. And I also think the plan isn't half bad because there's going to be some stragglers coming through this fort that Carlisle can munch on.
Yeah. And then his line is, we're not going to kill indiscriminately. We don't want to break up families.
And I believe him when he says it. Do you? Or do you think the power will just be too much?
I think he believes it when he says it, but I think we have to think about that in the context of the other quote from earlier in the movie. So earlier in the movie, he says something along the lines of, live to eat, don't eat to live, which, by the way, Benjamin Franklin stole from Socrates or Socrates if you want to do Bill and Ted.
Socrates.
Yeah, I actually looked that original quote up because I was like, I'm pretty sure that Benjamin Franklin didn't do this because Benjamin Franklin is the equivalent of BuzzFeed for the early Americas. The real quote is, base men live to eat and drink, and good men eat to drink and live.
Hey.
And I think the interpretation happening in that moment is that Ives is like he thinks he is eating or living to eat, but he's really eating to live because he's ravenous. He's always going to keep doing it and keep doing it and keep doing it. And that's what Boyd understands that Ives doesn't. It's like, once you start down this path, there is no stopping it. You have to continue doing it. So while Ives might think he might not break up families, Boyd knows that's bullshit and that he's going to do anything he can to continue to survive.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah.
And then poor David Arquette gets killed.
Yeah, off screen. I was very sad,
Wait,
I poured one out for him.
The blood rose into Martha's mouth, doesn't it? So wouldn't she become one of them?
By the logic of the movie, yes. She might become stronger for a short period of time, but I don't know if it went to her mouth or on her face, but it fell on top of her, definitely.
So when that happens to you, can you not eat regular food anymore?
I think you can. It's just that you're not sated or satisfied and you want human flesh.
Jeez Louise. So if blood ever gets punched in you, you're forever cursed.
Yeah. This is actually a good segue to a question I have that we haven't got to. Are vampires cannibals?
No, because don't they become the undead? So they're not really human anymore, right? Don't they become supernatural?
Yeah, I think that is the correct interpretation, because I looked up human cannibalism in the dictionary, and they were like, it's when a human eats another human. But vampires don't eat humans; they drink their blood, which is like a subset of a human. And they're not humans; they're the undead. So I think, I would say that vampires are not cannibals.
So then, I guess I'd be saying are zombies cannibals, but they're dead, so they're not really. They just want to feed, right?
Yeah.
Or kill.
Yeah. I mean, that depends on your interpretation of if zombies are humans. If they're like living humans that aren't dead, that gets dicey. But as soon as they're undead, they're no longer human, and I don't consider them cannibals. They're just zombies at that point.
These guys are cannibals.
These guys are absolutely cannibals. 100% cannibals.
Now, when Jeffrey Jones comes back, I love that he crushes the walnut in his hand, but earlier in the movie, he had to use the big book, so it shows his strength. Good moment.
Yeah, it's a really clever moment.
But at first is he ever with Ives? Does he like Ives?
No, I don't think he likes Ives at all. But he was basically, he's the example of having to eat to live. So he's like, I don't want to die, so I'm going to eat these people. I don't want to die, so I'm going to kill David Arquette and Knox. And then he comes to realize that that's not who he wants to be.
And then he gets his throat slit. Guy Pearce slit his throat right in front of Carlisle. Wouldn't have Guy wanted to maybe surprise Carlisle?
Yeah.